Happy Sunday. Happy almost Thanksgiving time. I am Coach Yolanda, International Spiritual Certified Spiritual Life Coach, owner of Evolving Spirit Wellness, creator of Mama Meditations, and all year long we have been doing inner child healing. It is the year of the inner child. It is the year that we decide and choose that we are going to be intentional in healing the challenges from our childhood, but also the triumphs. Sometimes there are things that went so well in your childhood that you may even be carrying guilt for. We still want to heal those too. We have been doing this work since the beginning of the year. We started with conception. Whatever your conception story is, it's really not about the who, the what, the where. It's about the energy of how you came into existence. There is, I believe, a reason that we are all here. And if you are here, particularly in this right now moment, it is purposeful and intentional to the entire collective consciousness. I would not be who I am, where I am, and how I am without the participation of so many others, people who I have maybe even never met in the flesh. I understand that. I respect that. I honor that. And so I'm thankful for those of you who join us here on Sundays at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and Facebook. Full disclosure, Miss Yolanda, Coach Yolanda is not 100% well emotionally today. And so if you see the tears flow, I would just ask that you let them flow without comment, concern. It is as it is intended to be. And I believe that tears are a healing agent. And if tears need to flow, then let them flow. Hey, Miss Erica, how are you? So happy to see you. So between our last meeting on Sunday and somewhere towards the middle of the week, I had this epiphany about doing some chakra healing. For those of you who don't know, in addition to being a spiritual life coach, I am also a Reiki master teacher. Reiki is the terminology for a Japanese healing methodology. It is energy work. Chakras are a Sanskrit name for energy centers, and there are centers of energy within our bodies, outside of our bodies. There are energy centers in all things. All things have energy or a component. Even the things at rest have a component of energy within them. And so, as a Reiki practitioner, I am well versed in working with energy centers. For those of you who have asked, I still do Reiki sessions. I don't do them in my home anymore, but I do long distance sessions. And I also visit others to provide Reiki healing. Reiki healing is different for everyone. It's different by every practitioner. There is a foundation of Reiki. And so a lot of what we're going to do today will have components of Reiki healing, but it's really about the energy that we are holding in our bodies. Before we start to gather with all of the energies of the people in our family, our friends, as we gather for the holidays, I felt that it might be beneficial for us to begin to balance some of those energies. Many of you caught me or have been following me because of my work with Stephanie Perry. Stephanie Perry, for those of you who don't know, is a mastermind at helping Black women leave the United States and build creative and functional lives in other countries. She also has a house sitter school. She has a huge following on YouTube, and many of you found me there as I did a meditation with Stephanie, I'm going to say about maybe 18 months ago. And that event has led to so many other events and has led me to meet so many beautiful women. And so it will be similar in nature to that meditation. So if you are watching on the replay or you are watching live, I appreciate you. I appreciate the time that you take out of your life to come together to collectively heal. As I said, I should have the disclaimer going across the bottom of the screen in case anyone comes in as we are meditating. But if during the meditation some emotions come up, that's what's supposed to happen. That is why I love energy work, because whatever is supposed to happen, we allow it to happen. And so we're going to do a meditation. We're going to go into the 7 main energy centers found on the body, from the base of the spine up to the crown of the head. I will explain where we are, what is going on in that energy center, what you might be holding, and how it's connected to inner child healing. I am grateful that I have the ability to pull all of these different elements in my healing work, whether it's spiritual life coaching, Reiki healing, meditation, massage. No matter what it is, there is always an element of spirituality in healing. That is always going to be the focus. And so today is no different. We started with some of the work from what's the young man's name or gentleman's name? Charles Whitfield, who also does inner child healing, has written a book all about it. Has written more than one book, but has given us information on releasing ourselves from the regret, the shame, and the burdens that we carry from our childhood. And so we've been going over those tenets. We did 4. Today, we're going to just do the chakra healing, and then next week we'll flow into the other tenets. But I also want to show what those are. And the number one being the child is always innocent. So, as we are doing the chakra healing today, let's keep that in our mind, that the child is always innocent, and that the issues that we're bringing up is not to blame anyone. It's not to pose ourselves as a victim to something that happened in our past, but to talk about the truth, to allow the truth to rise to the surface so that we can heal it. But we cannot tell the truth if we don't tell the truth about children being innocent in childhood experiences, and that every child is deserving of care, protection, security, warmth, and appropriate skin contact. Not every child gets that in abundance. Not every child gets that not shown to them. I can tell you that I had a childhood that had many of these components, but there may have been moments where some of these things were not present. I acknowledge that as well. We have to make sure that we acknowledge the experience of exploitation. At some point, each and every single one of us has had an experience of being exploited. Some of us are still having that experience, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's with our government, whether it's within our communities and our relationships. The intention is not always meant to harm or hurt, but sometimes because of our own egos and because we all want to live a particular type of life, we may manipulate other people and have and share an experience of exploitation. We have to tell the truth about it and acknowledge when we are aware that it happens. And children, more than any other group, have the experience of exploitation happening on a daily basis because they are dependent upon other individuals for their well being. If someone else is responsible for you eating, sleeping, being clothed, having housing, all of your basic needs are being met by someone else, then the experience of exploitation could occur. And we all have had that experience somewhere in our childhood where the pleasure and joy of another person was more important than our own. Even if it was so simple as put this dress on to make me happy. I know I had that experience. I remember fighting my mother tooth and nail about this hideous dress that she wanted me to wear. And I just did not want to wear that dress. And she kept guilting me by saying, just do it to make me happy. Why can't you do it to make me happy? Ultimately, I put on the dress, but I never forgot that feeling of, do not my feelings not matter? Do I not get to choose, what I want for myself? No, I didn't, because I was a child. Now, my mother's intentions were not to hurt or harm me. Doesn't mean that they didn't. Doesn't mean that that experience did not do that. And so we have to acknowledge the experience of exploitation, and that abuse of any form creates a lifelong imprint. If I can remember these things from my childhood, and I'm sure that many of you can remember things from your childhood that come up, again, abuse of any degree. It could have been something that no one else would define as abusive. But if in your heart of hearts, in the way that you feel, in the way that you see it clearly, it felt abusive, then no one else can tell you that it wasn't to you. That's your perspective. With a lot more understanding and a different perspective and being far away enough from it and healing it, you might see it differently. But abuse of any degree, of any form, can create a lifelong imprint. And if it does, then it could be impacting, that imprint could be impacting you right now. And so we have to talk about those truths. Okay. All right. Now, before we go into our inner child chakra healing, if anyone has any questions at any time, please feel free to ask. You can put that in the chat. Not everyone may be able to see it. I think on Facebook, the comments don't translate over to YouTube, but on YouTube, if you comment on YouTube, they can see it on Facebook. I'm not quite sure how all of that works. However, I will see it. And so if you have a question or a comment, I will post it so that we can all see it and have a fruitful conversation. If we need to stop, then we'll stop. If we need to laugh, then we'll laugh. If we need to cry, then we'll cry. As I said earlier, I'm not 100% at my 100% best emotionally, but I'm still going to get my healing and I'm still experiencing joy. I'm still experiencing joy in this work, and the responsibility that feels like a conversation is so joyful to me. This doesn't feel like work. This doesn't feel like it's part of my, business. This feels like something that I look forward to. And so before we get into that, I always say if we're doing healing work, you should have something to hydrate. Hopefully, it is water. It could be tea or lemonade. Hopefully, it's not anything alcoholic. No judgment. But if we are going to be doing healing work, just know that anything you absorb can impact the way that you are receiving or giving off energy. Because that's what we hope to do, is to shift some energy this morning. And being emotional is a great way to shift some energy. Letting it out, however you let it out, as long as you're not harming yourself or harming anyone else, let it happen. It might come in a cuss word. It might come in, you smacking something, hopefully not someone. But however you feel like you have to express that emotion, as long as you are not hurting yourself or hurting someone else, let it come up. Let it come up. So I would like to start with a prayer. And I'm choosing a prayer from my spiritual mama's book, Get Over It, by Iyanla Van Zant. I took the cover off. I always take the cover off of books because I like the feel of the hardback book. But this is her book entitled Get Over It. And what Get Over It means is there are thought patterns that get in the way of our healing. And so within this book is a descriptor of some thought patterns that we all have had in our past, 42 thought patterns, and how to heal them. And so one of the pervasive thought patterns that has come up for me this week is defensiveness. And so first, let me read how Mama Ia defines defensiveness: anticipating and or resisting attack, being sensitive to the threat of confrontation or injury to your ego, preemptive self-protection, being on guard against real or imagined physical, mental, or emotional threats. And so for many of us, the holidays can put us in a position of defensiveness, where we feel like we have to defend our choices, we have to defend our lifestyles. If you're going to be around your family, sometimes some of us are already creating stories in our mind that we are going to use to defend ourselves when perhaps our family members start asking questions or making comments that trigger us or make us feel a particular way. I've been having feelings of defensiveness for like maybe 2 weeks now, where I feel like I have to protect myself. I feel like I got to defend myself. And what that does to your nervous system, where you feel like you're already in fight or flight mode, where you feel like you've already got to prove yourself, where you feel like you've got to get people to understand what you're saying, why you're saying it, and who you are. It can put you in a defensive stance. And that can get in the way of your healing. It can get in the way of you hearing things clearly, seeing things clearly, and having a peaceful perspective instead of one where you feel like, I got to come out of this thing alive. So, all bets are off. The gloves are off. If someone says something to me, I'm like a raw nerve and I'm going to respond. I'm going to react. I'm going to say whatever I need to say to make myself feel better. A lot of defensiveness gets created in childhood when children start to realize that they have to take care of themselves because other people don't feel safe. They will create systems where they will defend themselves. Sometimes it looks like misbehaving. Y'all know I work in a child care center, and I see a lot of it when children are misbehaving, and we're like, what's wrong with that child? Somewhere in that child's energy centers, somewhere in that child's nervous system, the need to defend because of a perception that something is about to happen, because this feels familiar. This is what I'm going to do. Because that adult raised their voice. And the last time someone did that, I got hurt. Now, anytime I hear someone raise their voice, I'm going to be defensive. So a lot of defensiveness can be created in childhood because we are survivors. We are wired to survive. And so adult us, we've been doing it for so long, sometimes it's automatic. Sometimes it is part of the automatic response to external stimuli, even if it's not directed at us. We feel like we've got to defend ourselves. It is a heavy burden to walk around holding that type of energy in your body, in your bones, in your blood, in your muscle. It is exhausting to constantly think that you've got to ward off some potential threat. Sometimes we do it automatically, unconsciously, and then we understand it and or become aware of it later. And by that time, it could be too late because we may have said something, done something in defense of ourselves that cannot be changed, or we have created harm in places and spaces where we never intended to. So before we go and get together with our family members and we slap somebody in the face or tell somebody their cooking was horrible or don't even show up, many of us have elected, I'm not even going to show up. I'm not even going to go because I already know it's going to be a bunch of foolishness and I don't want to be bothered. How many of us have made the choice already to just stay home on Thursday, order some takeout, turn on, the television, and that is going to be the way you commune through the holidays? If that is not the experience that you desire and you wish to be in connection with others and you still want to protect yourself, let's do it in a way that doesn't cause us harm or cause us to react or respond in ways that we feel bad about later. Now, if you don't feel bad about it, if you feel like Auntie, Jessie needed somebody to cuss her out and you just happened to be the one to do it, if you feel like it was necessary and needed and it's okay in your heart, then so be it. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I'm not here to tell you that you shouldn't cuss out Jessie out, that you shouldn't tell your grandma to mind her business. You have to decide what sits well in your soul. Like the spiritual, it is well with my soul. If it's well with your soul, then so be it. But if it gives you a feeling of, oof, I don't want to be like this. I wish I hadn't have said that. I can't let other people get me to that point. There's a saying going around where people are like, I'm matching energy. Why would you ever want to match an energy that's already vibrating low? I'm not matching anyone's energy. I maintain my own. And I try my best to maintain a high vibration. If someone else is doing something that's at a lower vibration, that's on them. I'm not going to match that. I'm not going to drop low just because that's where you're at. And I don't mean in the way that, our beloved Michelle Obama says, when they go low, we go high. No, I'm not going to go high. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm probably going to look at you like something's wrong with you. I'm not going to match your energy. At least I hope not. But I can tell you, in this present season that I have felt very defensive, or the need to defend myself in ways that I wish that I hadn't. And so, hey, Giselle, happy Sunday to you. And so, let us start with a prayer around defensiveness. Whenever we feel like we have to defend our honor, defend our humanity, defend who we know ourselves to be, or whenever we feel disrespected. Because one of the things that children don't always get the opportunity to do is hear, forgive me, when they've been disrespected. We disrespect children all the time. We ignore their voices, we ignore their pleas, we don't include them in developing conversations at the level of their understanding. We just do things. I think about my decisions as a mother, where I may have had to move, or just do something that I knew was going to impact my children. I never asked them how they felt about it. I just said, this is what's going on and this is what's happening. Now, what I don't know is how that affects them now as adults. We all have a level of maturity, and none of us is above or below having something explained to us at our level of maturity. Whether or not it changes the choice or the decision is not the matter. The importance is that you are considered. And children are often not considered when choices are being made. And so if you had that experience as a child, you may have learned to be defensive because you had to learn how to take care of yourself in some way, some shape, some form. Okay? So I'm going to read a prayer and affirmation to neutralize, heal, and eliminate defensiveness. And this comes from Get Over It by Iyanla Vanzant. Let's take a deep breath, come into this moment where all things are well or on their way to being well. Most high, wise, and holy source of my life. In you, dear God, I live, move, and have my being. In you, I find wisdom. With you, I have power. Right now, I confess that I have not always made myself available to hear your voice. I confess that I have not always made myself available and willing to obey your word. I confess that I have not always been willing to reach out for support when I was consumed with anger or doubt or fear. I confess that I see and feel that others are against me, and that breaks my heart. I confess that I live on the defense waiting for the next attack. I confess that sometimes I attack first. I am so grateful there is such a thing as grace. Today, I ask to be healed by your grace. I lift my heart and mind in gratitude, knowing you do not hold my missteps against me. Today, I ask to be surrounded and filled with your mercy. I am grateful that I can make a new choice. In this moment, I choose to surrender my mental and verbal weapons. I choose to lay down all defenses and defense mechanisms. In this moment, I choose to release myself from all fear of attack and from all attacking thoughts. In this moment, I choose to be available to you and obedient to your will. In this moment, I choose to hear your voice and listen for your instructions. I'm grateful for the opportunity to self correct. I am grateful for the opportunity to get out of your way and to allow your light and love to shine in through and as me. I am grateful for the opportunity to allow your power to be revealed in and through me. I am grateful for your presence, which protects me from all harm. Amen and amen. And the affirmation is: in God I live, to God I listen, with God I need no defenses. Woo! Let's take a breath on that. In God I live, to God I listen, with God I need no defense. And so, for those of us who feel the need to put up shields, to build walls around our heart, if you are gathering with family or choosing not to gather with family this week because of the need to feel like you have to defend yourself for everything you've ever done or haven't done in your life, then I offer that prayer for all of us who may be in a season of building a wall where there should be a window or a door or a pathway to peace. And again, I am grateful that in God I live, to God I listen, and with God I need no defenses. And so, if there are defense mechanisms that we are operating from, may they be pulled down, torn down, and washed away with the wisdom and the intelligence that all things are well or on their way to being well, and that no man, no woman, no child, no experience could ever diminish the power of love that is within each and every single one of us and available to us at all times. Now, as we are preparing to do some energy healing, let us all keep that in our mindset, that the healing that we are doing is not to defend and so much protect, but to balance and open. This is an opening. This is a pathway. This is a gateway. This is you taking your heart and exposing it in such a way where it doesn't need to be defended, where you are requesting that it is honored for the sacred space that it is. My heart, your heart, holds so much sacred power. It is deserving of receiving and giving the same. And so this healing is to do that. So let's start to breathe, knowing that the breath is the one mechanism that does not have to be used in our defense, but can be used to enlighten and balance at all times. Finding the correct pacing for your breath is your responsibility. Oftentimes, when we feel like we are defending ourselves, we will either hold our breath or our breath rate increases. In this moment, I am asking all of us to connect on a slower pace where we can slow down our breathing, and perhaps that will slow down the overthinking that's going on in our head. Perhaps it will start to balance out the energy centers, the nervous system, all of the things that also get riled up when we are in a defensive position. Our muscles get tense. Our sweat glands start to open and do this thing where you feel like you are ready to fight. Your bones may be responding to your muscles tightening up, and your bones may start to raise. Those shoulder blades might start to go up. Bring them down. Let them fall. You may have noticed as of late that your hands are always tight, maybe in a fist. Let them go. Let them be loose. Check your posture. Are you leaning forward as if you are getting ready to lean into an attack? Or are you leaning backward because you feel like you want to keep things away from you? Can you create a posture where your heart space is open and exposed? Let it be exposed. As we are dealing healing work, we want that exposure. We want every energy center to be open and willing to receive all of the energy that we have just prayed for, created, and declared with our confessions, with our realization. And if at any moment something comes to the surface that feels uncomfortable for you, I offer that you give it love and you say, you know what? I know what you're here for. You are here for me to see you so that I can heal you. You are not here to hurt, harm, shame, or guilt me or make me feel like the choices that I made at any point in time in my life were the wrong choice. It was the choice that I felt I needed to make with the information I had at the level of my emotional and mental maturity. And it serves no purpose for me to waste energy trying to change those choices or make them look like anything other than the truth of what they are. So let's breathe into that. Let's breathe some truth into our body to release ourselves and to not forget that as children, we were innocent, that we may have had an experience of exploitation that made us think that we were not enough or that we have something to be ashamed of. And as we go around people and perhaps even return to places that may have been your source of pain at some point in your life, trust yourself to be able to walk into those spaces with that knowledge that I was innocent and that I may have been exploited, but I am no longer anyone's victim. And I will not allow the challenges of the past to impact me in such a way that I'm not in touch with a particular point of consciousness. Because in God I live, to God I listen, and with God I need no defenses. And so as we are getting ready to balance the energy that is in within our bodies, in our mind, and in our spirit, we are also releasing the defenses that we think we need to have in order to combat a perceived or real threat. It is not immediate. It may take some time, but if we have asked for, then we can expect healing to take place. And so the energy centers that we are going to work with and in today begin and are found along our spinal column, our beautiful spinal column, the base of our spine, all the way to the top of our skull. Because our skulls are connected to our spine, that is the column that I am referring to. 7 energy centers found along that system. From 1 to 7. And we don't have a lot of time, but we are going to take the time that is necessary to create an opening, to create a pathway where we are asking a cleansing, a healing, and a balancing to take place. Knowing that the power of our voice and our intention and what we feel in our heart is enough to create the healing to take place, and knowing that the power of the universe, the power of our holy source, is such that if we request and believe and trust, then it will be so. And on that, and for that, I am grateful. I am grateful that I do not have to split myself open in order to heal. That I literally can slow myself down, connect with my heart, connect with my source, and tell the truth. Knowing that the truth is a pathway to healing, let's start with the truth that is found in the first energy center along our spinal column, right at the base, and that is called the root chakra or root energy center. And if you feel led, because your hands are also energy centers, they are an extension of your heart. I've said that so many times. I'm going to put it on a t-shirt. If you feel led to take your hands and place them over the parts of the body that we are going to enter into, meaning the energy center is located there, then feel free to do so. When I am providing a Reiki session, it is what I do with my hands. It is one of the tools that I use to feel energy, my hands. I use a variety of tools, but my hands are one. And so the same could be true for you. So if you feel the need to take one hand and put it behind your back at the base of the spine and your other hand at the front at the base of your spine, then do what feels good and comfortable for you. Don't forget to breathe. We are not going to forget the easy breathing that keeps us centered. And that is a huge component of the healing process. Anytime you are doing healing work, pay attention to your breathing and how it is connected. And if you ever feel the need to pause and take a big, clean, cleansing breath, deep breath, and do so. Let your body tell you what it needs. We are now in the first chakra, first energy center, the root, at the base of the spine and also your perineal floor. Perineal floor. It also extends to your hips, your legs, and all the way to the bottom of your feet, this root energy center. And it holds the energy of our physical health and its connection to the world, meaning when I am fed well, then my physical health is well. When I am sleeping well, then my physical health is well. When I am clothed, when I am able to take care of myself, all of those basic survival needs, the energy of those can be found in the root chakra. So if there is a concern or a worry about how you will feed yourself, clothe yourself, house yourself, your physical health, the energy of that is going to be held in this energy center. The other component of this energy center is your skin, largest organ in the body. Our skin, which keeps us all together, will also hold that energy. And for many of us, we recognize that we are not well internally by the condition of our skin. And so let's take a deep breath and think about that energy center and all of the energy that it is holding and has held since we were children, young ones, without the ability to process a lot of information. But if you are dependent upon other people to take care of those basic needs, how they did that is held in your energy center. So if eating, feeding, clothing, housing was a concern for you in your childhood, whether you were aware of it or not, if you had the experience of moving multiple times, living with multiple people, never really quite sure if you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, what you're going to eat, no matter how old you were when you had that experience, it does not leave you and it can be held literally in your skin. So that now, as an adult, it is at the forefront of your mind. And the basis of many of your decisions are connected to it. How am I going to meet my basic needs? How am I going to survive? I cannot experience what I experienced when I was a child. Perhaps you had an experience of severe neglect or abandonment. Certainly and surely that is influencing your decisions now as an adult in terms of how you survive. And so, if we are going to be gathering with individuals who were also a part of that experience, if we are going to be gathering in places and spaces where we are going to be made to feel as though it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone else is okay, that everyone else is surviving. If other people are going to make you feel like if they are not surviving in a particular way, then somehow it's your fault, then let's call in some balancing energy in this moment, because that is a burden that is not yours to carry, but it may have been created when you were a child, so you carry it anyway. Somewhere we learned that it was our responsibility to take care of everyone else, that was one of the functions and purposes of being alive, for someone else's benefit, for their survival. And certainly those of us who have, had the experience of parenthood sometimes feel that way. I have to make sure that they are surviving. And so how I survived is impacting the way that I make sure that the people I'm dependable that are depending upon me survive. All of that energy is held in our skin and held in that energy center. The corresponding color, because there is a color for each of the energy centers, the corresponding color is red. It's fascinating that that would be the color, because it is also something that is connected to our survival. Sometimes when we see red, it could mean our end or someone else's. Sometimes when our blood is not healthy in the way that it should be, it can depend on whether we survive or not. So survival and what it takes to survive, and it's different for everyone. My idea of surviving may not be your idea. Some people believe that they are not surviving if they don't have the best of everything, if everything isn't easy for them, if everything isn't placed at their feet. They believe that they may not be surviving. Some people get used to not having anything. And so when they don't have things, they don't even recognize they're not surviving. Either of those extremes could have been your experience as a child. And if it is impacting you now, let's heal it. Let's ask for the healing. Let's ask for all of the healing energies of the four directions to come into this moment, lifting up the truth of how we feel about our survival and our ability to survive in relation to others. We might be out there comparing ourselves or comparing our childhood experiences to someone else's. Sometimes that happens in a group dynamic. If you belong to a particular group and you feel as though your childhood experience was impacted because of your relationship within that group, let's say you're a woman and you think, well, because I grew up as a girl, I wasn't afforded these opportunities, or because I grew up as Black, I wasn't afforded these opportunities, or because I grew up white, I wasn't afforded these opportunities. We all have our stuff where we feel as though our survival has been impacted because of the group or status that we had as children, and what that does to our psyche as we are developing, to where even our definition of survival sometimes exceeds the actual definition of survival. Are your needs being met? And are you able to meet them? And if your answer is no, then certainly the choices, the conscious choices that you are making on a day-to-day basis are connected to that. When we don't believe that we have the ability to survive, we will do, say, and behave in ways that we otherwise would not if we thought we were okay. Sometimes we align ourselves with individuals that we wouldn't even give the time of day, but for the fact that we feel like I can't survive without this connection. Let's take a breath on that, because sometimes it's the people who raised us. We tell ourselves, I wouldn't be able to survive without mommy, without daddy, without grandma, without my siblings. Even though they treat me like trash, I'm telling myself I wouldn't be able to survive without them. So I'm willing to take the inappropriate behavior in the inappropriate relationship because I'm telling myself I wouldn't be able to survive without them, or they wouldn't be able to survive without me. Let's take a breath, a collective breath for that story that many of us are holding, that we have to put up with abuse because we wouldn't be able to survive without the abuser. And your definition of abuse may be different than mine, doesn't always have to be physical. But if you are getting ready to go gather with your family and they're going to talk about you or make you feel a particular kind of way, you please don't feel like because they're family and they don't really mean it that it's not abusive. If it hurts your consciousness, hurts your feeling and the way that you feel about yourself, it's abusive. It's violent. And many of us will put up with it because somewhere in our mind there is this core belief that I wouldn't be able to survive without these people. And they may be the very people that are killing your spirit, killing the essence and the light that is within you. And we feel like, well, I got to take this pie over there because I told them I was going to bring it, knowing what we are about to walk into. And we have to ask ourselves, why would I put myself in that position time and time again when nothing ever changes? Because we're hoping that if we remain good, at some point they will change. And that is a child's mentality. It's something that we learn in childhood, and it's one of the defense mechanisms that we develop. That if I'm agreeable, they will take care of me. That is what children think. And it's a perfectly appropriate belief when you're 4 that if I'm a good girl, then they'll take care of me. They won't yell at me. They'll be happy and pleased with me. And that doesn't leave you. So then we get into this behavior of I have to be agreeable. I have to not impact them so that I get my needs met. And your needs still not being met. They still, let's take a breath. I am grateful that that is not my experience, but it doesn't mean that I haven't experienced it in the past or that I might not experience it in the future. And so I am asking for healing for all of us, for whatever is held in our root chakra, where our survival is a priority, but sometimes our choices may not be the best for us, but we tell ourselves things because we just want to survive. I just want to survive. I want to be loved. I want to be cared for. And if I got to get beat up a couple of times to get it, so be it. We tell ourselves that it's natural. When you hear people say, oh, all men cheat or all women are this, or we tell ourselves these things because it becomes part of that survival instinct. Let me tell myself this lie so that I can get through this thing that is hurting me. Let me create this truth in my consciousness so that if I see it, I don't have to demand that it not be what it is. That I don't have to create a healthy boundary to keep it out of my life. And as many people are now saying, I'm not going to be in a relationship if it means that I have to do X, Y, Z. You mean if it means you have to create a healthy boundary? If you have to have standards? That's a root energy center issue. Let's cleanse it before we get around the Thanksgiving table to where we are not saying things that hurt and harm us for somebody else's benefit and pleasure. Grandma can't say whatever she want to say just because she reached a particular age. She got to watch her mouth too. Or at the very least, we have to have a healthy boundary or relationship with ourselves so that when grandma starts to say the things that she's not supposed to say, we're not triggered or ready to attack her. I had someone say to me this week at work, let me just tell you, because I know you don't hear it enough, that I appreciate you. And my response to them was, I thank you so much. I appreciate that. But let me let you know, I'm not looking for acknowledgement. I know I do a good job, and that's good enough for me. I'm not waiting around for other people to tell me I'm good at what I do. I do that for myself. If someone should do it, I'm appreciative. It's like the cherry on top, but I'm certainly not holding my breath waiting for somebody else to tell me that I'm good, to tell me who I am. I know who I am, and I appreciate myself. Because if I don't do it, if I don't know it, I can't wait for other people, because in God I live, to God I listen. With God, I need no defenses. So I don't need to be a pick me, tell me I'm a good girl, because I already have it. And that is how you balance some of those challenges in your root chakra, by continuously telling yourself, I can meet my needs. And not in an extreme way where we all become hyper independent and we don't, let anybody support us, with balance that says, I can get my needs met. And part of knowing how to get my needs met also means I know how to ask for help. That is also a root chakra issue, challenge. Part of survival is also knowing when to ask for help. And if you are an individual that has a challenge with asking for help, then balance out your root chakra. Let's move on from the base of our spine to that second shock energy center, our sacral, which is right above our reproductive system, our lower abdomen, front and back, your lower abdomen, right above those reproductive organs, which, by the way, is not a very large space in our body. When you think about your body, that sacral energy center is really not a large portion of the physical body, but it is a huge component of the emotional body, because that is where we hold our emotions, our desires, our pleasure, our creativity is connected to that sacral chakra. The corresponding color is orange. And that's where you feel the emotions get stored. Small area, huge impact on your nervous system. We don't always think that. We love to give the brain credit, and the brain should get the credit for the operating system of the nervous system. But the energy center above, the sacral energy center, woo, it can wreak havoc on that nervous system. And so for any of you who may have physical challenges in the reproductive area, it's probably connected to some emotional component in your life. And if we look at it from the inner child perspective, our emotional maturity develops over time, but it doesn't mean that the emotions are not intense. If you've ever seen or been around when a 2-year-old has an emotional outburst, we know it's intense. They may not have the emotional maturity to know what it is that they are experiencing. Could be anger, could be sadness, could be both of those things at the same time. But that outburst is intense. And so think about all the intense emotional energy that you have expended over your lifetime being held in your sacral chakra. That's a lot. That is a lot, which is why so many of us shut down emotionally, which is why so many of us avoid feeling. And so, in this right now moment, where we are opening up our heart space and we are pulling down defenses, we are going to ask that the sacral chakra become a place of peace. And again, if you wish to place your hands there, do so. For many of us who are connecting with family and friends this week, it can be an emotional time. For many of us, who are having right now the experience of missing someone, either because of death, because of loss, or because of circumstance, where you can't be wherever they are, or they can't be where you want them to be, and it is hitting you emotionally. That's a burden. That's a heavy burden to carry, but you have to feel it. If you want to be authentic in your healing, then you have to allow yourself to feel every emotion authentically. We don't learn how to do that as children. The minute children have emotions when they're little, we're ready to tell them to be quiet, soothe them, stop them from crying. Sometimes, even when they're laughing and joking, we're like, y'all playing around too much, sit down somewhere. We're always trying to control children's emotions. And we then don't get the benefit of developing our emotional center so that we can have the emotional maturity as an adult to deal with all of the things that we have to deal with. So if you had a childhood experience of not being allowed to recognize, realize, and live in your emotional body, and you feel or you recognize now that you are an adult that just doesn't feel, then that is where that energy is held. And so we ask that the energy of the four directions, north, south, east, west, all ancestors, ascended masters, all of those who are invested in our healing, all of those energies come into that place in space right now to let us know that our desire, our pleasure, our feelings, our emotions are valid and necessary to our healing journey. And if somebody is about to push your buttons emotionally because they know how to do it and they don't feel emotionally safe, that is why we do this work. Because so many of us will spend this week with family and friends and then come home feeling drained emotionally because we had no idea it was going to take every fiber of our being to even be in that particular place in space. Many of us, this is the first time that you may gather without particular loved ones. And that is going to hit you emotionally because we don't know until we get into it. How am I going to feel without this person's presence? How am I going to feel when people say things that, even if it wasn't their intention to hurt me emotionally, it did? How am I going to resolve, restore, and balance myself emotionally so that I can process all of this information, so that I'm not overtaxing my nervous system, but that I'm not also shutting it down? And in the prayer that I read this morning, that defensiveness, where we feel like everyone is against us, and we tell ourselves, you can't let them get to you, so you got to have a heart of stone, of concrete. That is not who you were created to be. And so give yourself the benefit of feeling what you need to feel. We might be getting into some heated conversations with our loved ones, and that's emotional. I actually like those kind of conversations where people are. I'm looking over at some of my records, and one of the records is the group, The Emotions. I like it when people are having fruitful, emotional conversations. You really get to see who someone is when they tell you how they feel, and they can articulate why they feel that way. And you hope and you pray and you trust that people don't try to make you feel bad for the way that you feel, but it happens because we're human. And we all want to be heard and seen and valued. And so my feelings mean more than your feelings. And so I'm going to ride or die for the way that I feel or the way that I think. And I'm going to tell you you're wrong and you're going to tell me I'm wrong. And we have yet to learn how to let people be who they be and love them anyways. I am still learning how to love the person and analyze the behavior. It's like, I can tell you I love you, but I may not like what you're doing. I love you, I love you, I love you, but you're being real funky right now. And so we are asking, because sometimes that's me, sometimes it's us, loving ourselves and yet feeling bad about the way that we are behaving because of our emotions. Right above those reproductive organs, all of that energy is stored. A very small portion of our bodies. And I know we like to think it's a big part, but a very small portion of our bodies that guides us and directs us, and sometimes directs us in places that we never expected to be. And so we are asking for the holy source of all that is to balance the energies of our emotions so that it doesn't take us into places and spaces that we don't deserve to be and that we can't get out of. Or as some would say, watch your mouth. Hi, beloved. Let's move on to the third chakra, third energy center, which is found right above your navel, your belly button, but below your heart. That good old solar plexus. The solar plexus, corresponding color, ooh, I'm sorry, forgive me, is yellow. And that solar plexus holds the energy of our thoughts, what we think about ourselves, our value, the things that we are interested in, the things that hold our thoughts. That thing that you can't just stop thinking about yourself and how it relates to someone else. And if when we were children, our thoughts were all over the place. Oftentimes, other people were thinking for us or telling us what we should think, what we should feel. And so, if you had a childhood experience where you may have shared what you were thinking, and somebody said, "Don't think that. That's wrong. That's crazy. Don't tell nobody." And then maybe you didn't learn to develop thoughts for yourself, or your caregivers had such an influence on you that their thoughts became your thoughts and you didn't know where their thoughts began and where yours ended. And so now as an adult, you don't know what you think about yourself because their voice was so large and so big that it created who you believe yourself to be. If that was your experience and now you are going back into those places and spaces and being around those people where you now feel like you got to pretend to be what you think they want you to be instead of being yourself. Your self-esteem and how you value and your self-concept of yourself means more than anything. It has to mean more than what other people think. We have to get to a point where we don't care, or let me say, the impact of other people's thoughts about who we are cannot be greater than our own. You have to develop a sense of self where you know who you are. Because I'm telling you, based upon other people's perception, they will tell you who you are, and you may believe them. And just like the prayer, held within the prayer that I read this morning, we may be resistant to opening ourselves up to particular things like love, like peace, like freedom, because we are so hell bent on what other people's perception of us is. You know, when they talk about people who don't really have a voice or who don't really stand up for themselves, they may have had an experience as a child where that was not allowed. They were not allowed to develop their own voice. They were not allowed to develop their own personality. Every single thing was thought out for them. Where you're going to go, what you're going to wear, what you're going to do. And oftentimes, I know it has been my experience, growing up with a lot of individuals who had very strict households. By the time they got a little bit of freedom, they were wild as all outside. because their experience was so restrictive. I am grateful that, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but my parents allowed me to be who I was. When there were discussions about politics around the table, we were allowed to be at the table to enter into those discussions. When discussions about, world events or anything was going on, we were allowed to be at the table and to have those discussions with adults. And one of the things my mother would always encourage us to do is read everything you can get your hands on so that you can develop a sense of who you are and what the world is. She said, I am not raising idiots who are just going to believe anything that comes down the pike. You have to educate yourself for yourselves, and you have to develop your own voice so that no one can tell you who you are. You already know. So that when people say, you do this, you do that, and you're looking at them like, who are you talking about? I know that's not me. That's your perception of who I am. But I know that's not me. And so, if you had a childhood experience, and this is what the inner child energy center healing is about, we're taking those early experiences where we were developing, looking at how it is impacting us now, and asking for healing to take place. And so, if you know it to be in your character to have low self esteem, that's not something you should feel bad about. That's something you should be aware of so that you can do what you need to do to fill yourself up. And so that you can make a choice that says, I'm not going to be around people who don't value me and who don't contribute to the well being that I demand for myself. So let's call on all of the energies that are present to love us well, our holy source, our higher source, our divine source, the divine intelligence that is within each and every single one of us and that is connected to the source of all intelligence. Let's ask for that healing and that balance to happen now. I know we're going long and we only got to the third chakra. So we're going to move up to what everybody knows is my favorite chakra, the heart chakra. It is the fourth chakra along the spinal column. Its corresponding color is green. And it absolutely is the gateway to all things. Your heart starts beating, that's it for you. Now, your brain may not have all of the activity that it needs to have, but if your heart is still pumping, technically you're still alive. The heart is the transformer of all things. All things flow to and from the heart. It is a healing element, it is a healing tool. It will cleanse all things because it is where love is held. That's why it's my favorite. Let's take a moment and breathe. The feelings of love and goodwill are found in our heart. And when we feel as though our heart has been broken, and if you have lived on earth longer than a day, you have experienced some form of heartbreak or heartache. You cried out, that cry was not answered immediately. That does something to your heart, does something to your consciousness. And here we are. I'm 52 years old, and there are many times that I have cried out and there was no answer. And I have had to learn how to heal my heart. We all do. And we all come up with different methods and ways of healing our heart when it feels as though it has been broken or damaged or not considered. Sometimes those ways are equally or more destructive than the initial hurt or harm. Sometimes we don't know what to do to heal our hearts. But the affirmation that I read this morning, in God I live, to God I listen, I need no defenses. And so for all of us who feel like we have needed to defend and protect and close up our heart, I'm here to tell you healing can't happen with a closed heart. And so we've got to open it up. And anyone who knows anything about survival or fighting knows that the most vulnerable position that you can be in is with an open heart. If someone has access to your heart, they can hurt you in ways that you can't even imagine, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, when your heart is open. And yes, it is a risk, but it is a risk that we have to take if we want to heal. And if you want to live, your heart has to be open. I don't know what else to tell you. Welcome to healing. No one tells us that as a child. No one tells us that the things that hurt us and harm us when we're little, that we have to learn how to forgive. No one explains that to us, but somehow they expect it from us. You know, you get a spanking, and then 5 minutes later, your mother is like, "You want something to eat?" And you're like, "Wait a minute, lady, you just destroyed my whole life. And now you want to take care of me." It does something to your psyche where it makes it harder and harder for you to delineate what is love and what is it not, particularly when it's coming from people who harm you. Humans operate in crazy ways. We hurt the people we love, and we love the people we hurt, and our heart is supposed to be forgiving. I can't say that I got a very good I know I didn't get a very good lesson on forgiveness as a child. I just had to accept stuff. No one told me how to forgive myself. I learned the lesson that if I did something wrong, I'm supposed to carry that guilt to my grave. No one told me or explained to me what redemption was, other than the story the life of Jesus Christ. That was the only redemption story that I ever heard. No one ever showed me what that looked like. No one showed me how to have compassion for myself. No one showed me how to have love for myself. I was told I had to have it for other people just because. But there's a process to forgiveness, and it has to begin within our own hearts first. Did anyone tell you that when you were younger? And if they didn't, I apologize. And I hope that we all recognize that sometimes we need to hear it, even if it's not from the source of the pain. It is such a horrible thing that happened to you, that happened to us. That when we needed compassion and forgiveness as children, it wasn't afforded to us. That we were looked upon for all of the things we did wrong instead of all of the ways that we were right, and that we were trying. And if anyone measured you by your wrongs or your perceived wrongs instead of what was in your heart, then I am sorry that you had that experience. Or I pray that you find peace from that experience of never, never being afforded the opportunity to see compassion for some of the things that you did when you were a child. And what I now know as an adult, in order to give forgiveness, we have to know how to do that for ourselves. And so I understand that many of the people in my life when I was a child didn't have that lesson either. So they couldn't give what they didn't get. They didn't even know it was something that they should have had. That it was a a right, a privilege, something that they should have been afforded. Compassion, that's held in the heart chakra. And that's why it's my favorite, because it's something that I continuously learn with every lesson. How do I forgive myself for my behaviors, for my actions, for my thoughts, for my words? When I was operating from a place when I wasn't seeing myself in my highest form, in my holiest form. When I was operating from a place of hurt and pain and shame and regret, and so what came out of my mouth, what was created in my head, and what I held in my heart was not true to the essence of who I am and who my creator made me to be. Let me forgive myself for all of those times when my tongue became more vicious than a knife in my own ears or in the ears of someone else. And if I am going to gather with my family and friends, before I do that, let me balance out that energy in my heart. So we're not arguing around the chicken. So we're not spitting out or choking on the mac and cheese because something just doesn't feel right in our heart. Where I can look at people where I may have had a disagreement with and I can see it differently. Let me not hold on to the wounds of my childhood so tightly that it keeps me from loving now. Let's move on. We're going to be quick. Let's go to the throat. And every time I do an energy meditation, I have to talk about the placement of these energy centers. And so the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, everything below the heart is a physical energy center, meaning it relates to our physical reality, our physical world. Your survival is connected to the physical world. Your emotions are connected to the physical world. The way you think about yourself is connected to the physical world. When we get to the heart, because it is a transformer and a balancing agent, things start to change. And so the heart is a bridge between the physical energy centers and the spiritual ones. And so the throat is the first spiritual energy center on in the body. Yay. The heart is also a spiritual energy center. And it doesn't mean that the other energy centers don't have a spiritual component, because they do. But the energy that's held there is connected to a physical component or spiritual component. And the throat, even though it's something that has a lot of physical elements, you hear my voice, you hear me scream, you can see my tongue moving, you know, those are all tangible things. The energy that's held in that throat chakra is everything that has been said, hasn't been said, wanted to be said, shouldn't have been said. All of that gets held here. And I am reminded, my spiritual mother says that the mouth is like a womb and it gives birth to things. We give birth to things every time we speak, and it gets into the ether and it lives forever. And so when we say things to people, even if it's forgiven, it's still there, the energy of it. And so things that you have said or that have been said to you when you were a child is still with you. Stuff has come from somebody else's throat energy center and entered into your psyche, into your consciousness, and you're holding on to it. Because that is the way in which we communicate. And we must remember that the throat is also connected to the ears and the nose. When we think about it, that is whatever we are tasting, whatever we are hearing, whatever we are smelling, all of those things are connected. It is like a nervous system minefield. So when we think about what we're saying, how we're expressing ourselves or not expressing ourselves, it makes sense that it has a spiritual connection, because words mean things. Even if it's in a language that you don't understand, the energy behind it means something. And we can be so careless with our words and what we say and how we say it. We don't know how it's going to land in someone else's energy center and what it creates and how they absorb it. And language is so beautiful, and it can be so destructive. And so if it is your experience that as a child there were things said to you that you heard, that you absorbed, that created an expression of who you knew or thought yourself to be. We want to heal it. We want to heal it. I want to heal it. I want to heal those things that I heard, even if it wasn't directed at me. I heard it. And I think about the arguments and the fact that I can remember word for word some of the arguments that my parents have. It is a further impression upon me of just how impactful words are. It's like I'm sitting there, even in present day. I can remember what was said, how they said it, the energy of how they said it. And it was like, as an adult, I understand it differently. It's like, wow, y'all were really trying to hurt one another. Y'all were saying some stuff that, ooh, connected to a heart space, and the throat energy center being right above the heart is not by accident. I mean, come on. When we talk about speaking from the heart, there should be, I wish there were, if I was designing a body, I wish there was some mechanism between here and here that would filter or stop some of the things that we are getting ready to say. You know, even though we should all have the autonomy to express ourselves fully, sometimes the things we say come from a place of pain and hurt, and they do so much damage. And sometimes we can't undo that damage because it's been spent. And certainly, as a child, and what is one of the tenets? Abuse of any form creates a lifelong impact. So if there was abusive, vulgar, violent language in your childhood experience, it created an imprint on you, whether you are consciously aware of it or not. Whew, to the point where if you hear it again or you hear it with the same energy as an adult, it takes you right back to childhood. Like, I know what that is. I know where I heard that before. For me, it's not enoughness. Even if the person doesn't use the words "you are not enough," if someone says a particular thing, that's what I hear. Right? Throat chakra, that's what I hear. You could say, "Oh, your macaroni and cheese is not that great." What I hear is, "I can't cook. I'm horrible, and I should probably never go in the kitchen again." You know, that's what we do. That's how we process information, and it's not about the moment that it happens. It can be about all of the moments that we have had across our lifespan that bring us to the point where we're still dealing with, which is why in the prayer this morning, it's like, I confess that I live on the defense, waiting for the next attack. So many of us are like this 24 hours a day, even when we're sleeping. We're waiting for something to attack us, to hurt us, to harm us because of the experiences that we may have had when we were a child. Doesn't mean they were all bad. I happen to believe that I had a pretty good childhood filled with laughter and love and wonderful experiences. But there were some moments that I wish I could have skipped that impact me, that have created a need that I tell myself to protect myself. Because I've seen it, I've heard it, I've absorbed it, I've seen it, I've heard it, I've absorbed it, I've smelled it, I've lived in it. If you've lived in an environment of dysfunction, and I believe we all have in some shape or form, it's in here. And therefore, when we are expressing ourselves, sometimes the hurt, the pain, the defense, all of that comes out. And so our throat energy center, we have to be mindful of what's being created here in our mouths and what's going out into the ether. Because even if it's not directed at you, even if it has nothing to do with you, it can still hurt you. There are things going on in the other parts of this world that don't directly affect me, but they're still affecting me when I hear it. They're doing what? They're saying what? How could it not? How could it not when it's such a powerful agent? And so we have to be mindful. And we are asking that if words were expressed that impact the way that I express myself, I'm asking for that to be balanced and healed by the source of all that is holy. Let's move to a common energy center that we all talk about, the third eye, the brow, right here. It is between our physical eyes, but it is also where we see things visually in your mind's eye. And the mind is made up of mental and emotional energy. Your mental your mental energy, your emotional energy makes up your mind, right? The way that you process things. How do you feel about it? How do you think about it? Before it becomes a physical thing, it's all going on up here. I have created so many different scenarios in my head that never came true, but it was real for me and it was real in my mind. Mentally and emotionally, I'm thinking a particular way. And as we started, I said I'm not 100% my best emotionally right now. So I don't even want to tell y'all the things that are being created in my mind right now, in my mind's eye, in my brow energy center, in my third eye. Things I know will happen for me, things I desire to happen for me, things I don't want to happen. All of that is going on up in here. And it has always been so. For those of you who work with children, they are the most imaginative creatures. They come up with stuff, and you're like, where did that come from? We had a visitor in my center, and he was reading a book to the children. And one of the kids said, he looked at him, he said, "Are your eyes blue?" And the guy said, "I don't know. Do you think they're blue?" And someone else said, "No, they're green." And then one of the kids said something like, "I think somebody changed your eyes when you weren't paying attention." Like they were coming up with all of these stories. And I love that. I hope that no one ever takes that away from those children, that they let the kids be the kids and come up with the crazy stories and come up with the imagination. Because if you had the experience as a child where you creating things in your mind was constantly disrupted, diminished, or you were told not to do that. Where are all my daydreamers? I can remember, being in class, looking out the window and pay attention, pay attention. You're not paying attention. And how many times do we say that to children? Pay attention, pay attention. We take them out of their imaginative place and put them in reality. And so the seat of our mind, where we vision things, where we create things first before they become real, everything we see in reality was created in someone's mind's eye first. The chair that I'm sitting in, someone had to visualize it here before it became a real thing. And the same is true for all of us. But if we were not afforded the opportunity to be creative, to create things on our own, I love the kids that color out of the lines, even though now it gives me agita to see that because I grew up where everything had to be perfect. We didn't want kids coloring out the lines. Now there shouldn't even be lines. Just let kids be creative. Let them create whatever it is that they desire to create. And for all of my creative adults, I hope that you are still creating. And I hope that you do so without the confines of what it should look like or what somebody else's look like or if people are going to like it. Just create. If it's up here, if it's connected to your heart space, just let it live, let it breathe, let it be a real thing. Do that for your inner child that may not have gotten the opportunity to do that because it wasn't poured into. I heard Spike Lee say a couple of times that the killer of dreams for most kids are their parents. That if parents don't pour into the ideas that their children have, no matter how foreign they are to the parents, that you kill a little bit of them. And that's something that happens to many of us. So this energy center doesn't get developed. So if it was your childhood experience that you were not allowed to be creative, that you were not allowed to be a visionary, and that part of your development was disrupted, it's still impacting you. Go play, go color something outside the lines, go do something that you have created here and let it be a living, breathing thing. Do it for your inner child. And our seventh chakra along our energy center, ooh, we gone long today, is the crown. The crown is at the top of the head and it spreads out a little bit above us because we are spiritual beings. Not everything has to happen on our bodies. Things can happen as an extension of our physical body. And the crown chakra is no different. And the crown is literally the connection to your higher source, that part of you that is an expression of the higher source or holy source or God or the divine or whatever name that you choose to call the source of all that is found in all things. When I'm feeling some kind of way about myself, when my solar plexus needs a bump, I often think about how the elements of the planets and stars are also found within me. That the same thing that is found in stars, that is found in trees, is also living and breathing inside of me. And if I think that trees are great, and I think the air is wonderful, and I think the sun and the stars and the solar system are magnificent, then why wouldn't I think that way about myself? And I've heard an individual from a Native American community say that we are cousins to nature. What is found in them is found within us. And so we are family. And so for those of us who are joining with our families, don't you go into those places and spaces feeling less than. Don't you go into there feeling like you've got to diminish who you are for other people's pleasure. Recognize who you are, your connection to spirit. Recognize that there is something that is living and breathing within you that created all of creation. And part of it lives in you and wants to express through you. Because in God we live, to God we listen, and with God we don't need any defenses. So going into these places and spaces that may give you a little bit of anxiety, and I even believe, and this is my own personal belief, that those of us who have episodes or experience with anxiety, it's a defense mechanism. It's your nervous system saying there is something that is about to happen or will happen or hasn't happened yet that could cause me pain. And I'm trying to resolve it. And it's overwhelming. And so if you're having those feelings of anxiousness, recognize it as a connection to something beyond you telling you to defend yourself. But also recognize that the very thing that is telling you to defend yourself, there's also that element that doesn't need a defense of because of how powerful you are. I hope that makes sense. I hope that resonates in your body. No one told me that when I was younger. I'm not sure if that was your experience. I have been raised with a certain power and strength that I owe to my parents, to my family. You know, I come from a line of strong women where we just kind of do what we do and we don't really question it. We just operate from a particular place. I'm grateful to say that I raised three daughters and a granddaughter that also have that thing, where we just know, we just do what we do and we operate how we operate. Doesn't mean that we're not emotional, doesn't mean that we don't have mental breakdowns. It means that there is something that we have connected within us that is connected to something external to us or higher than us that also lives with us. And I'm grateful for that. But it's a constant working relationship. And I trust that I will continue to work on that relationship until I take my last breath, that I'm constantly pouring into my crown, that I'm constantly pouring into my brow, that I'm constantly pouring into my throat, my heart, my solar plexus, my sacral, and my root, and all of the other energy centers, and there are numerous ones. I pray that I continue to pour into myself greatly and pour into others so that we all recognize there's no need for a defense mechanism when you are the mechanism. There's no need for me to defend myself against anyone else when I am the protection, I am the security, when I am the safe space in my mind, my body, in my spirit. There's no need for me to avoid particular places and spaces when I control the energy when I enter into that space because I am in control of who I am. And I'm not looking to control anyone else. I'm not looking to impact anyone else negatively. I'm here to love. I believe that to be my primary responsibility here for the time that I'm here, because it is also my biggest lesson. I am here to love and to facilitate loving in others. So if anybody asks me who I am, what it is that I do, that's what I do. And so I hope that as we've been talking about these 7 energy centers and what's in you, what has never left you from the time you were born into this physical reality, it has not left you. So if you're going to carry it, I hope that you carry it well. I hope you carry it in a way that it is balanced so you can navigate all of the experiences that you will have as a human, because that is temporary. Your spiritual self is eternal. I'm grateful. I hope that as you gather with the ones that you love, that you let them know how much you love them, but that you also let them know how much you love yourself and that you're not tolerating any foolishness this holiday season. We're not going to go into 2024 talking about I'm not talking to so and so. I've cleared myself, and I know it's a lot of language that's going on right now where people are like, I'm releasing myself from my family. I'm releasing myself from this person, that person. If you've got to release yourself from multiple people, then you might be the source of the problem. That's all I'm saying. No judgment. But if you feel like you have to constantly release yourself from people, then maybe the answer is in here and not out there. There are individuals that I may not agree with, that I may not always have the best relationship with. But as long as I have a good relationship with myself, that is my primary responsibility. I have to be good in here, or I am of no value anywhere else in the world. And so, my prayer for each and every single one of us is to be well within so that we can deal with the madness of whatever is going on externally. Giselle, you are so welcome for the reminder. I had to remind myself of my own root chakra healing stuff. Like, it's some heavy stuff in there, particularly because it is something, again, that even if we don't have the emotional or mental maturity to understand, it still affects us. It still affects us. You may not have known when you were 5 that someone needed to feed you on a regular basis. You may not have known that. Your body knew it and it impacted you. And it may be still impacting you where now you don't have a healthy relationship with food. Does that make sense? We may not have been consciously aware of these things when we were children. Doesn't mean that it didn't impact us. Giselle also says language is important to help with connections and with healing. Let me tell you something. Um, Something that I have said in coaching relationships is you have to learn the language of your own heart in order to let other people know how to communicate with you. It's like if you went to a foreign country where you did not know the language, but you still needed to navigate the country and how to take care of yourself, you would pray and hope that someone would have mercy on you and help guide you and direct you, right? Like when I went to Morocco, there were language barriers, and I was at the mercy of the good people of Marrakesh to help me navigate those alleyways and so that I was fed and taken care of. I literally had to rely on the kindness of strangers to help me because of a language barrier. My heart is no different. If I don't know the language of my heart, how am I going to tell somebody else how to navigate it or what's required or what my boundaries are? So language is so important when we're healing and when we're making connections with people. And when people say, "Oh, well, you're just supposed to love them." How are you going to love them if you can't communicate? And it is also important for us to learn, if we see the value in it, and I hope we see the value in it, in learning the language of someone else's heart. How are you speaking to their heart if you don't know what the language is? It may be different from yours. It may be a new language you have to learn, but there is so much value in it if you truly want a healthy, loving connection. We went so long today, and I didn't even take a drink of water, nor did I take a break. And earlier I said, if I start to cry, then y'all forgive me. And not one tear was shed. And so I'm grateful for all things happening as they were intended. I trust that as we are traveling or not traveling, if we are making choices and decisions that are the best for us, I hope that it is well in your spirit. If you are going to meet up with your loved ones, I hope it doesn't tax your nervous system and make you want to pull your eyelashes out because you decided to go to the family gathering and the family is driving you crazy. I pray that people are gentle with your heart. I pray that people will take the necessary time to learn the language of your heart in a way that doesn't exploit who you are, but it allows you to shine and allows you the autonomy of who you are and your full humanity. Your full humanity, no matter what it looks like, as long as you are not harming yourself or harming others. I pray that we all connect with that place and space within us that is just as majestic as the sun and the stars and all of the planets in the solar system and beyond. I pray that we understand and trust that when we feel something, it is true for where we are in that moment, but it could always change. I pray that you have a transformative experience with love and that the language that speaks to your heart is understood and appreciated. And if there is any further discussion about the energy centers that you would like to have, reach out to me, let me know. I think we will do this maybe on a regular basis. We don't have many more Sundays to go before the end of the year. We are going to continue with the 15 discussions or declarations, I should say, around inner child healing from Charles Whitfield, who wrote Healing the Child Within. We talked about the first four. We're going to do the others. We're going to continue to talk about the developmental stages. We're going to do a whole lot before the end of the year. And so I trust that this was of value for you, that perhaps you heard something that will open your heart up in such a way that it leads or creates a pathway to your healing and allows you to be comfortable no matter what experience you are in. I often like to think of Nelson Mandela and the years that he spent in prison and how he said, as long as they didn't have my mind, I was never in prison. My body, my physical body may have been behind bars, but my mind was never imprisoned. And I think about that when I'm doing my own healing. It's like, did you put your mind in jail, Yolanda? Did you limit the expansiveness of your mental and emotional capacity? Because it is endless. Don't do it to yourself. We do it when we get caught up in the ego and other things. Allow yourself the benefit of pausing, breathing, reminding yourself who you are, how you were created, and what is expressing through you at all times. Allow that to happen. I am grateful for you as well. And I trust that this week is filled with grace for you. If this is the first time that you are without someone, I pray that you are able to get through the day, the hours, the minutes, and the seconds in a way that honors you and honors them, no matter the circumstances. If it is painful to you, I pray that you find some peace. I love you. I'm grateful that we had this long time together, whether you are watching the replay or live. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I always forget to say, um, subscribe, like, share, however they say it, to someone that may be of benefit. Um, Also, if you feel like this space is not enough and there is a space that you would like for me to enter in and share some words of wisdom and guidance, please let me know. Even though I'm no longer doing one on one coaching, I am always going to be a spiritual life coach till I die. So I would be more than welcome to have a discussion around how we can extend conversations in other places. I love y'all. Thank you so much for watching. And I pray that the rest of your week is as gentle as this was for all of us. Have an amazing rest of your week. And I love you. Bye.